From sexy sports cars to sensible saloons, we Brits can be proud of our motoring heritage.
Beautiful, very British.
What a great-looking car.
And for a small nation, we've produced some of the most incredible motors ever to hit the tarmac.
You can't say it's not a fantastically well-made and designed car.
Some so beautiful they could make a grown man cry.
Lovely motor that was. I wouldn't mind one now, actually.
Others that, well, just make you want to cry.
My dad used to make me go-karts that were safer than that thing.
It's like putting the space shuttle engine in a milk float.
Whether they were a roaring success or a disaster on wheels, these are the cars that made Britain great. Here in Britain, we've made some damn fine luxury cars. Fast.
Lotus Esprit, what a lovely car that was.
Stylish.
When you get an Aston Martin, you know you're in an Aston Martin.
Showstoppers.
The thing is about an E-Type is everyone just stops and stares.
These are the stuff that motoring dreams are made of. But they're not the cars we're looking at tonight.
I think Brits dream about luxurious flash cars, but are seriously really more comfortable in the Vauxhall Cavalier.
In this programme, we're on the hunt for Britain's favourite cars, the true classics. Those great and perhaps not so great motors that millions of us actually drove, warts and all.
I had a Ford Angular that I bought for £30.
A green Cavalier Mark II, which was disgusting colour.
The thing which really struck me about the Morris Minor Compared now is the amount of wood you get in that car. It's like friggin' wood everywhere.
I can't believe I'm talking about the transit van. And we didn't even have a shop.
The tick list we'll be judging the favourite car on is simple.
It's this lovely vehicle. It's very reliable. It's easy to park. It is efficient. It is without doubt the best car I've ever had.
So buckle your seatbelts, sit back and eat your crisps. Because it's time to pull the choke out on the car, imprinted in the memory of 70s drivers as king of the road. The favourite car of millions. It can only be the famously flashy Ford Cortina.
A Ford Cortina is the first car I ever remember getting in with a bunch of mates without an adult.
My dad had a Cortina estate, I think it was a 1.6 GL or L in red, bright red, with a white sort of piping down the side of it.
My first ever car was a Ford Cortina Mark II 1600 GT, which was the top of the range. And on the dashboard, you used to get an extra 4 dials, which the cheaper models didn't have.
They had a regular Cortina and then later an estate. Ford Cortina was everywhere. I mean, I can't think of a sort of more ubiquitous car of its time. You don't see them very much these days.
The Ford Cortina first rocked up in 1962, targeting the growing family car market. It was lightweight, easy to drive, and cheap. Bullseye.
Its averageness was its genius. It looked okay, but not great. It wasn't a big car, it wasn't a small car, it was just bang average. And, you know, we can't get enough of that in this country.
In 1972, the ballsy Mark III Cortina shot to the top of the car charts, where it stayed for nearly 10 years.
It was quite a roomy car, and up until that point, sitting in the back with my family, you know, the 4 of us, we were just kind of cheek to cheek. But when we got the Cortina, we thought, oh, actually, your face doesn't need to be next to mine. We've actually got a bit of space.
I think the Cortina represents a lot for British motoring. It was the car that got the jobs done, taking salespeople to their meetings, driving kids to school, to their aunties, to the swimming baths. If you had a Cortina, you were really well placed. You were at the heart of society. You were doing all right.
When it comes to Cortina fans, and there are a lot of them out there are none more passionate than comedian John Culshaw.
I've got 4 Mark III Cortinas. I just think it's important to cherish them.
So a lovely example of a Mark III Cortina here, a 2-litre GXL in the Onyx Green. One of those lovely Ford colour chart names there, Onyx Green.
The Ford colours, whoever designed the names of those colours, Arizona Gold, Miami Blue, Roman Bronze, wonderful names. I'd love to have been in the meetings where they were coming up with names like this.
So, you could buy the Bang Basic factory model, or you could spend a bit more and up-spec your new Cortina from an impressive list of official optional extras.
My favourite design with the Mark IIIs was the twin headlights. Sometimes you had singular ones or oblong ones. I think the twin headlights gives it rather a nice face. The cars like the GXLs and the 2000E had all these luxury extra bits, like a stuck-on bit of trim here and an aerial.
Ford do something very clever, and they do it well, and that's taking your everyday man's car and, you know, injecting it with steroids. Rather than running around scrapyards, or just do it for you. They go, look guys, don't worry about customising your car, we'll sell you this one.
But if you did want to customise a car yourself, then the Cortina was a perfect blank canvas, especially when the next generation of owners found their inner Lawrence Llewellyn Bowen.
I didn't mind a little bit of pimping up, you know what I mean? You'd always have the big stereo in the back, wouldn't you? You know what I mean? I think at one stage I actually put hi-fi speakers in the back shell.
And you'd jack the back of the car up like this, and then you'd clean off the back axle, and you'd paint that with silver paint, and you'd stick a red light bulb under there and connect that to your cigarette lighter. It looked like a tart's handbag by the time you finished with it.
It was the car you associate with furry dice. It was the car you associate with Go Faster stripes. It was the car you associate with that weird sort of sun visor gel that would be at the top of the windscreen with the name of the driver and his current girlfriend.
Well, I had 3 wives, actually. I'd have got to keep bloody ripping it off. It would have had to be one of those rip-offs, like the visors. Just keep ripping them off and putting another bird's name up there.
The car you could tart up could also do this. Enough to get any Cortina owner in a spin.
Ford knew what they were doing. You take a pretty average car and you market it beautifully, you throw money at motorsport, and you get people like Lotus to do the hot engines. That was the grandfather of the Sierra Cosworth. That's what started this bloodline of, you know, rapid engines in kind of average cars, and that's why it became a working class icon.
Sadly, the Cortina's winning run ended in 1982, when it was knocked off the top spot by the all-conquering Escort. Ford then replaced the Cortina mark entirely with the salesman's spaceship, the Sierra. It was goodbye forever to the Cortina, the favourite car of boy racers, their dads, and all the people who live in John Culshaw's head.
If the Mark III Cortina was a person, who would it be? Maybe DCI Gene Hunt, but when he knocked off from being a copper and he put his tie on, he went to the pub, or his mate's wedding, something like that. Perhaps even, maybe a young Roger Moore.
You know, before his movie career started, you know, before the days of Bond and the Saint.
When he used to advertise knitting patterns, stood there in a cardigan.
So can anything compete with the mighty Cortina in the search for Britain's favourite motor for the masses? Coming up, the favourite that sold in fleets.
I suspect the origin of the Cavalier was definitely the Reps car, and it was Vauxhall's answer to the Ford Cortina.
And a car to cuddle.
I've never met anyone who isn't nice who drives a Morris Minor.
Welcome back to the cars that made Britain great. We're using the rearview mirror in the search to find our favourite old-school car. The ones that sat on a million drives and said, I may not be perfect, but I am yours.
So you'd be driving along, and if you needed to put some water on the windscreen, you had to take your foot off the clutch, and it'd be pumping like this to get the water up onto the windscreen.
It's come up the sides, crazy. You'd never even think, why would somebody even make something like that?
They didn't have air conditioning. It was either Inferno or freezing.
Everything was plastic wrapped. Everything with clear plastic.
In the 1970s, the Ford Cortina was the daddy. But it was about to face off with a serious contender for Britain's favourite car. Into the ring stepped Vauxhall Motors' finest, the muscled-up mile machine that was the Vauxhall Cavalier. Vauxhall had the Cortina in their sights. The Cavalier appealed to people who didn't like furry dice, couldn't afford a Rover, imagine, and wanted a bit of power under the bonnet.
I love Cavaliers. So I bought this Cavalier for £200. I drove it for probably nigh on 2 years, I should think. 2 to 3 times a week doing a 200-mile round trip to see my dad. Used to occasionally put some oil in it, and I was so impressed by its long-leggedness and its reliability. I mean, it's still a pig-ugly car.
I had a Vauxhall Cavalier, a 1.8 injection one, which was that served me well. The registration number was HKW, so I named it Hawkwind.
Vauxhall claimed the Cavalier was superior in every way to the obviously pathetic Cortina.
In a traction test on a wet surface, front-wheel drive is proven to be far more efficient on pulling power. On the open road, excellent road holding. Just watch the Cavalier's corner. Same road, same speed. This time, the Cortina. Need we say more?
Not really. I'm convinced. Indeed, some people remain so convinced by the Cavalier, it's taken over their lives. Meet Catherine Harper. She's crazy about Cavaliers. She's got 3, and this is her long-suffering husband, Malcolm.
First time I saw it on the forecourt, it was just instant. That's the car I've got to have.
Yes, if it was still 1979.
We had a golden Cavalier, Mark 1, then we had a green Cavalier Mark 2, which was disgusting colour, but it was green inside as well. And I remember going, "That's lovely, Dad, but green inside."
Yeah.
You get your foot down and get out.
I wanted a car that I could drive in. I mean, really drive in, you know? Not potter around in. Give it a bit of welly. There we are.
Smart, reliable, affordable. What more could a motorway hogging company rep want?
As a company car, for the reps, amazing. There was huge demands for them, and Vauxhall were trying to supply all the big companies wanted huge amounts of them for their fleet.
I suspect the origin of the Cavalier was definitely the reps car.
After years of losing money, Vauxhall has now reversed into profit, and its star performer is the Cavalier, a car which has brought 2-shift working back to the Luton plant, successfully challenged Ford's domination of the fleet car market.
One of its biggest qualities was the fact that it appealed to every market. But at the same time, it was also in the same price bracket that your average homeowner could own. People who wanted a safe car, reliable car, it was Vauxhall, so they always knew they could get spares, they could get repairs.
So not exactly a sexy car then. Catherine loves her Cavaliers. Malcolm, not so much.
If you melted all 3 down, I'd be well on my way to my Jeep Cherokee, Grand Cherokee or something.
Oh, rubbish.
Look at that though, even the Kia there.
Boring, 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 boring.
It's not boring.
I think we love to think that we want an Aston Martin, but then you look at the difference in price and you think, oh, can I afford £200,000 or shall I put £6,000 down on the Vauxhall Cavalier?
But new cars today are all utterly
comfortable.
Ideally, I think Brits dream about luxurious flash cars, but are seriously really more comfortable in the Vauxhall Cavalier.
I just love driving in it. Pure escapism. Forget everything else. It's fantastic. Best tonic ever. I'd recommend it to anyone.
Over its 20-year life, the Cavalier was the favourite car of nearly 2 million Brits.
Roll, Britannia, Britannia, roll the waves. Britons never, never, never will be slaves.
It was the reigning champion of Vauxhall Motors, but is it good enough to beat the Ford Cortina to be the favourite? Ah, the age-old battle.
You're either a Ford man or a Vauxhall man, but I think I definitely stayed in the Ford side all the way up.
Without a doubt, I fell on the Ford side.
The reason my dad loved Ford was really simple. Value for money.
Dad's always been a Vauxhall fanatic. Ford wouldn't have even got a look in my family.
See, everyone took sides, but Ford and Vauxhall were always top dogs in the mass market for Britain's motors. However, if we're talking about bestsellers, we have to mention the one good thing to come out of wartime Germany, the Volkswagen Beetle. Oh, look, there's one hiding behind a milk float.
My first Beetle was a turquoise green. The car had belonged to my mother, then it was handed down to my sister, and finally it was handed down to me. I was incredibly grateful, and I had a lot of love for that car.
Between 1952 and 2003, over 21 million Beetles were sold worldwide.
The VW Beetle might be the best thing on four wheels, still. It's a design classic, and although it's a German car, it somehow belongs to the world.
The master plan for the Volkswagen, or people's car, was that it should have room for a family, be good on fuel, and be affordable. The standard tick list for a popular set of wheels.
I never really took a Beetle seriously as a car, really. It was sort of more like, oh look, someone's just driven up in a Dodgem. They're just sort of silly for a German. It's like a German got drunk. I think we like that. It's good. It shows that the Germans relax occasionally. Apart from Hitler, obviously.
The Beatles soon dropped out of politics, went travelling, and smoked some weed.
And they felt more like people, really. So I loved them, but they're nothing to do with Britain whatsoever.
You might ask, well, what's it got to do with Britain? Why is it one of the cars that made Britain great? But the first two Beetles were sold in the UK in 1952, and then in the late 70s, in 1978, VW moved their headquarters to Milton Keynes. So the Beetle and Britain have, you know, a lot of love.
Maybe, Julia, but it's not British. So, though we love it, it's not in the running for our favourite. Old school rules apply. You see, nowadays we'll buy a car from anywhere, but back then we were proud of our own car industry.
Living in Birmingham, there was loads of car factories. I always felt that these cars were like made by real people.
I do remember buying British and buying British goods and, you know, the car manufacturing industry in this country.
You knew you were buying British. I think that was probably the overriding thing.
The Beetle wasn't British, so if you really wanted a cute, buggy little box, we made one of our own. No, not the Mini, the Morris Minor.
Looking at the fabulous Morris Minor 1000, admiring the smart, smooth lines of it, marvelling at the space. Room for a family of four to spread itself.
A Morris Minor driver is the epitome of a nice person. And when I think of a sort of celebrity equivalent, you think of Louis Walsh. Just a nice man, quite all right looking, nothing special, just like the Morris Minor.
The Morris Minor was an economy car that came out in 1948. It meandered around roads without having to worry about pesky speed cameras. Although, to be honest, the words speeding and Morris Minor are rarely heard in the same sentence.
The great thing about the Morris 1000 was, you know, it handled well, so it was a great joy to drive round corners. And the great thing really about those days is that the limit of the car on a wet roundabout was about 10 miles an hour. So I could gracefully opposite lock round roundabouts, and if I did lose control, it was a 10-mile-an-hour crash.
My mum had a Morris Minor, and then also it used to have those indicators which come up at the side as you turn, like just come up the side. It's crazy. You'd never even think, why would somebody even make something like that? And my mum would always just take those off. She drove into the garage, put the car in the garage, there goes the indicators, pow. No signalling from now on. That was my childhood, man.
The Minor series began with a saloon and a convertible, which was shortly joined by the Estate Traveller, the world's first half-timbered car.
My favourite one was the Traveller, the one with the wooden back. There's more tree on that car than there is metal.
The amount of wood you get in that car, it's like freaking wood everywhere, through the dash, the sides, it was just like, they had wood.
My first car I bought was the Traveller, the estate version, with the wood, with the moss obviously growing, rotting away the wood, and chassis rotting underneath because I bought it in the dark. But they were just such an endearing car, lovely character, and it was the enjoyment, driving satisfaction.
The Minor was designed by engineering genius Alec. I also made the Mini Isigonis. The Mini might have swung for singles, but Isagonis made the Miner a proper family car, with a boot. In 1961, it made history by being the first British car to sell 1 million. It was everyone's favourite. Well, perhaps not everyone.
And I remember the seats, they were like... I don't think that there was no way they were leather, but they were just like this burgundy red seats. It was plasticky. And I tell you what, I do remember sort of like getting up and it was like... God, it was just uncomfortable.
I think the Morris Minor was probably banned from Luton because I don't remember seeing that many of them. It was... I suppose if you drove in it, people go, you don't come from these parts, do you?
Detractors aside, the Morris Minor is a true Brit, a people's classic, and a strong contender for our favourite car.
Everybody should have a Morris Minor to tootle around in. You don't want to go on a long drive on a motorway in a Morris Minor, but if you're just going to pop down to the shops, take the Moggy, take the Minor. It's cool, I love them.
Coming up, some magical twins ponder the question, what cheap mass-market car was out of this world?
What engines were in the Ford Anglia? I have no idea. V12, V12, turbo.
And could a van be Britain's favourite car?
It was a Ford Transit, you know. You're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off.
Has the cars that made Britain great inspired you to become the proud owner of your very own British-designed car? Well, with a chance to win a brand new UK-engineered MG3 3-time, that dream could be about to come true. Put your stamp on the design with a choice of non-metallic colour, and with your first registration and 12 months road tax all covered, you'll be ready to hit the road the moment it arrives at your door. For the chance to get your hands on this great British runaround, simply text CAR to 65515 or call 090 416 12555 or post your name and phone number to CAR, PO Box 7557, Derby, DE1, 0NP. Entrance must be 18 or over. Texts cost £1.50 plus one message at your standard network rate. Calls cost £1.50 plus your network access charge. Lines close on the date shown on screen. 3 days later for postal entry. For rules, go to channel5.com/win. Tonight, we're high-fiving the country's favourite cars. The dog-haired, vinyl-seated, crime-infested classics we all grew up with.
The car was part of our family. It was, you had to really look after it.
You know, there'd be about 8 of us all crammed in this Cortina estate going off the games and what have you.
You remember the sounds of gears as you changed, the way they kind of got quieter.
The steering wheel was about 14 feet wide, and it didn't do anything. You could turn it all the way around, and it would still be going in a straight line.
The whole car wallow backwards and forwards. And if I'd been in the back,
So far, it's the Vauxhall Cavalier and Ford Cortina out front, vying to be our winner of Britain's favourite car, with the cuddly Morris Minor also in with a chance. But let's throw a spanner in the works. A spanner in the shape of a panel van with a criminal record and a kick-ass sound system.
Somewhere in my past I might have said every man should have a Transit.
Transit was, of course, the choice for people in popular music.
If you ask me about the Ford Transit, I'd say that's probably one of the most, if not the most successful commercial vehicle ever made to this day, and it's still being made in its masses.
There's something wonderfully dodgy about the Ford Transit. Do you know what I mean? Just by owning one, you're kind of slightly obliged to every so often break the law. It's just got a sort of swarthy, sort of, you know, slightly sort of twisted, rebellious quality to it. You can do good stuff in it. You can also have some real fun doing bad stuff too.
The Transit wasn't designed to lead a life of crime. It was aimed at the blokes building Britain, not nicking it.
builders, chippies, everybody, small businesses, anybody need to move stock around, and that would have been, I imagine, the first wave of buyers.
The Transit was the replacement for the old-fashioned Ford Thames Trader. A charming van, but it was getting on a bit.
Everybody had other sort of vans that were a bit slow, and the engines were sort of in the middle of the cab, and everybody would sort of get cough with the fumes and have oil in their suits as they got out of the van.
When the Transit was first shown in 1965, it started a feeding frenzy, with £33 million worth of orders placed before a single one rolled off the production line.
As soon as the Transit came along, it was like driving a modern car. It was fast, it was comfortable, so everybody bought Transits.
At that time, growing up, you know, a lot of Asian people had shops. So, you know, in the 70s and 80s, I think most Asian households had a Transit van. It is a great vehicle. You know, you get a lot of stuff in a Transit van, and we didn't even have a shop. That was our car.
I used to be a market trader when I was younger, and I used to pull up at the market with my Transit, and it had a tailgate that used to lift up like this. So you could stand underneath it when it rained, you get all your stock out easy. It would hold tons and tons of stuff. I mean, what cars have sliding doors nowadays? You pulled it like that and you climbed in. And if you were a rebel, you drove down the road with a sliding door open. Oi, oi!
The USP of the Transit was that it didn't act like a van.
The Transit leads the way.
I think it was the first van to be driven like a hot hatch. You know, when I think of the Transit, I think of it just tearing away at the traffic lights.
Fitted with a 7-litre Ford V8 engine, but with standard axles and suspension. It proves the strength and durability of Transit, even in these really tough conditions.
I think it's the first van that straddled the private and professional and the social. You know what I mean? You get the feeling that guys with a Transit, and take it out of the weekends, you know, stick the wife and kids in the back, hit the seaside.
Knowing Transit van owners, that's not the only thing they'd be hitting.
I mean, all my mates are out on these sort of, you know, pulling the birds in their flash cars. I, though, had a Transit van, which had a lot of space in the back, which, you know, at times has its advantages.
Moving swiftly on. What was good for bricks and bonking proved even better for rock and roll. Britain's bands were rocking, and the Transit was how they rolled.
When we first toured Europe ever with Squeeze, we went in a box Transit, and we'd taken in turns to go in the front, and the rest of us had to go in the back. And in the box, above the front cab, which where we would sometimes sit up, there was a little hole this big. And I don't think, I'd never been to Belgium or Holland before, so at age 17 or whatever it was, and I was just so excited to put my eye and look out at this first view of Europe with an icy wind coming in, looking at a few trees and a motorway. Oh, it was very exciting.
My mates were in bands, we used to travel around in the country in the Ford Transit. It's like a sort of party zone, really, in the back.
There were great things that you could do with them. I mean, if you really wanted to do a major move, you could actually slide open the sliding door and do one as you're going past. Now, that was fun.
By the time of the Stonehenge festivals, you had maybe 20, 30,000 people at those festivals were living regularly in vans. And you could put in bubble wrap and some plywood, and that was your insulation. You're warm inside, cut a hole through the roof, you can put a chimney in, you've got a wood-burning stove inside, some 2x4, you've got a bed. I mean, these things are fantastic. I still know people that live in them today.
This is something awesome about them that will live on forever in rock and roll. Many a song has been birthed from the back of a Transit van. Many a gig has been begun and ended in the back of a Transit van.
You haven't been in a band unless you've had a Transit van, have you?
Yes, whether you were the mamas and the papas, or a mama and a papa, the Transit van had you covered.
I remember my dad buying it, and then whatever was in it, that normal seat, he'd ripped those out. He'd bought some other seats from the scrapyard, put those in because you could get more people on these benches. And there did seem to be a competition between the Asian community of who's got the best, you know, Transit van interior for their family. Oh, and I'll tell you what, the other thing I remember, my dad put a carpet in the Transit van. Yeah, just to make it comfortable.
There's no pleasing some people. So, the Transit. More than 10 million sold so far, an all-round motoring icon. Surely it with a fighting chance to win the title of favourite. But what if the Transit's earthly charms weren't for you? Imagine you're a hip young thing in the early 60s. An era of flight, jet planes, rockets to the moon, Sputnik. You don't want a worker's van, do you? You want an affordable car that says, I'm now, man. And yes, it has fins. I give you the Ford Anglia 105E.
I never owned a Ford Anglia because I have a problem saying the word angular for some reason.
Dude, that's the only reason I've never owned a Aston Martin. Anyway, the Anglia, it's a car, Tim, but not as we know it.
And with that weird cut-off back end, I don't know how it got through the design process, because usually there's a quality control in terms of just the aesthetics of the car, the way that it looks.
It was just that one oddness about it that I think caught everybody's eye. I think the Anglia just had that weird look about it that was like space age in those days.
That's what made it so cute.
The Anglia 105E appeared in 1959, and in 1960, 200,000 cars were sold, setting a new record for Ford. And each car came with a free Earthling in every boot.
I don't know why I can't say angular, but I just can't. But anyway, a Ford Anglia is a hot car to pimp.
Vivian in the Young Ones had a pimped-up Anglia. Probably because it was the most unlikely car the producers could think of for anarchists and poets to be driving around in to zany music.
I had a Ford Anglia that I bought for £30, and it was really great. I had to fill it up with water every 5 miles. It had a leak in the radiator. I should have kept it, really. It would be worth millions now, with Harry Potter and all that.
Yes, in Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, the Weasley twins rescue Harry from suburban hell in their enchanted flying Anglia. A car chosen because a friend of the young J.K. Rowling had owned one, so to her, the car represented freedom and an escape from the miseries of teenage life.
Hiya, Harry.
Ron.
To the boys playing the Weasley twins, however...
To be honest, the first thing I thought, which may upset some Potter fans, I'm not sure, I thought, wow, that's Vivian's car from the Young Ones.
Yeah, the one SPG died on the front of.
Yeah.
There it is.
We're reuniting the twins with an Anglia for a short spell.
It's funny, isn't it, when you see it for the first time, like, you just think it's like a sad man just going like... Why?
Use your magic, mate. Or the handle. There you go.
You in? I think so. Do you want me to drive it, or...? Well, see, this is what made the Ford Anglia so great. It was so social as well. Because while you're waiting for the engine to catch up, you'd have to sit and make small talk the whole time.
The 105E was the 4th iteration in the Anglia's life. This modern model was a world away from the original 1930s version. A lot of science had gone into the 60s revamp, resulting in a pocket rocket with a top speed of 73 miles per hour. And because there were no bulky airbags or music systems fitted, there was plenty of room.
I can understand now why the Weasleys would pick Harry up in this car, because it's quite spacious, headroom-wise.
It is a car that turns heads, and you want to know what people are thinking when they're looking at you. If they know the Anglia, they go, oh, it's a Ford Anglia. But if they don't, they go, that's not a very nice-looking car.
Oh, come on. In its time, it was pretty funky. Even the colours were cool. This was a futuristic funmobile for the youthful miss and man about town. No wonder 1 million models were sold in its 8-year lifespan.
What engines were in the Ford Anglia? I have no idea. V12, turbo. It really just take you back to a time when this is really what it would have been like. You know, without going on any motorways or anything like that, driving down a B road on your family holiday, no doubt the kids would be in the back winding you up. You'd have already fallen out with the co-pilot or your wife navigating. You'd have fallen out with them for giving the wrong directions or giving the right directions and you're not listening to it.
But without the radio, so when you have an argument driving,
yeah,
You know when there's that awkward silence and then you turn the radio on to drown it out and then you forget about it? That wouldn't be able to happen.
I bet Ford thought that when they decommissioned the Anglia in 1967 and replaced it with the Escort, which, to be fair, did prove more popular. And probably had a radio.
I'm surprised they haven't actually remade one. They could do quite easily. I bet there'd be a few potterheads who'd do it if they just sold it only in that blue. I bet there'd be quite a few takers on that.
Thanks for the tip, twins, and good luck to the Anglia, sweetheart of the swinging 60s. Coming up, a famous racing driver revs up a family favourite.
Hello, I'm James Hunt.
And Barack Obama plugs the Cortina.
I think President Obama would describe the Ford Cortina as very much the British Ford Mustang.
Don't forget you can still win your very own British-designed and engineered car, the brand new MG3 3-Time, with your choice of non-metallic colours, first registration and 12 months road tax all covered. It's a great British ride. To enter, text CAR to 65515 or call 090 416 12555. Post your name and phone number to CAR PO Box 7557 Derby DE10MP. Entrance must be 18 or over, and for rules go to channel5.com/win. We've been driving down memory lane, indicating where appropriate, in our hunt for Britain's favourite car, and along the way, finding out the secrets of their success.
Why are the bestsellers ordinary cars? Easy answer, because they're cheaper.
Definitely size, money, and price of petrol.
You get spares cheaply, you can insure it.
Does the job. Tick that box.
Did they look good? And it's a two-letter answer, and it's not yes.
Well, in favourite land, looks come a poor second to usefulness. Before the break, we heard how the plain old transit van was top for a generation of rockers, and how the weird-looking Anglia got the vote of swinging Britain. But what if you craved good looks and glamour?
Hello, I'm James Hunt. This Vauxhall Viva. It's comfortable, it's economical, handles well, and like all today's Vauxhalls, it's built to last.
I think when we think about James Hunt, we think about the blonde hair, the women, Formula One, Danger, Niki Lauda, and the Vauxhall Viva.
In fact, I believe the Vauxhall done a lot in the last couple of years to make their cars even better.
I think it's his greatest legacy. A few extra sales of Vauxhall Vivas. And I think he would like to be remembered for that. You can see in the advert his performance is wonderful. He's such a raconteur, he gives it everything, and you can tell he really, really loves the Viva.
Take a test drive at your Vauxhall dealer now.
My dad, being the practical British man, convinced me to go for Viva box type. They called it the box type because it looked like a box.
Dad liked them because they were reliable, they were cheap, they had everything he wanted on a car.
We also had a Viva, and ours was a white one. Yeah, it was. I mean, it was ubiquitous. It was everywhere. On every street corner, there were Vivas.
The vivacious value-for-money Viva launched in 1963, and by the 70s had become Vauxhall's best-selling car ever, appealing to, it's fair to say, the older generation.
Very, very quiet engine, very, very slow car. My dad wasn't a fast driver. He still isn't. But yeah, it was particularly sluggish.
I quite frequently stop at traffic lights and people would do a double take. Wasn't that bloke on top of the pot seat? No, not in that car.
The third and last Viva model, the HC, was capable of 90 miles an hour in the right hands. Punchy.
I was a union official. The car they provided for was the Vauxhall Viva. Now, that was a very nippy car. Its engine was very good, but it was very light and it rusted like hell. I think within a week it was almost rusted up.
Yes, the Vivas were infamous rust buckets, but a whopping 1.5 million Brits didn't mind having a dissolving car. However, in the late 70s, Vauxhall came up with a cunning plan. They realised marketing cars to different sections of society was nonsense. Oh no, they were going to produce a car that would clean up across the board, that would be all things to all people, and they came up with, are you ready? Oh, even I'm excited, the Vauxhall Chevette!
Whatever you do, whoever you are, go anywhere, 'cause it's your kind of car. The Vauxhall Chevette is whatever you want it to be.
So the Chevette was marketed in the adverts as the car that can be whatever you want it to be. They didn't bother with any kind of niche. It was just like the whole car market is what they were after. So they were saying that you can go out socialising, you can go fishing. The message was, please buy this car.
Vauxhall Chevette. It's whatever you want it to be.
I'd quite like it to be a Porsche.
Our lovely neighbours, Mr. and Mrs. Malpally. She had a Vauxhall Chevette, and they kept it in a carport under sort of green plastic corrugated, and the sun used to shine through it, and this Chevette looked green. It looked like a sort of a space-age Doctor Who buggy when it was first out there.
You can't say anything wrong about the Chevette.
If you were into abductions, this was your car of choice. The perfect car for a kidnapping. There were just no doors in the back.
That was the one I had, the two-door hatch.
From 75 to 78, the sporty Chevette was the best-selling hatchback in the country.
Was it really?
Yeah, it was.
Really? Wow.
I know, yeah, wow. Partly because for a couple of years it was the only British-built hatchback of its size. It was quite a distinctive car in its day.
If memory serves me right, the Chevette had quite big rectangular headlights that were sort of set at an angle at the front.
Those sort of oddly inset headlights with the silver wrapping around them, like sort of chameleon's eyes. You know, things like that. They seem to follow you around the garage, that sort of thing.
It had a look. It was utilitarian, but with ambition.
We liked the Chevette. Nearly 500,000 people bought one. But it's funny how few are willing to stand up for it now.
But in the motor industry, we call them Vauxhall Shovets.
They might not be pretty, but they stand out. They've got character, and I kind of wish I still had it now.
When I was at school, we used to call it the Vauxhall Shitvette, which I think is quite telling. Even the children were critics.
So, this is the moment we've all been waiting for. Which, in our view, is the most loved and adored of Britain's favourite best-selling classics? Well, it's not the Chevette or the Viva. And with apologies to all Cavalier fans, Transit heads and Morris Minor lovers, in our undemocratically elected opinion, it's got to be, fanfare please, the Ford Cortina! Time for a victory lap. Take it away, John.
It's a lovely day for a drive, wouldn't you say?
They even have their own sounds, these. Right then, let's fire her up. Very sure of herself, God bless. I think this was the favourite car and the bestseller that it was because it was just very versatile. Felt quite big, roomy, practical. You could fit all your stuff in it. And it wasn't sort of square. You know, they were cool.
It did everything that people wanted it to do. It was a good-looking car, it was practical, it had a good resale value. You know, from a motoring point of view, it ticked all the boxes.
The lovely thing with these cars from 1973 and so on is that you have to sort of drive them, if that makes sense. They take a little bit more effort.
The sunroof that you turn with your hand, you have to turn with your hand. You've got the steering wheel and you're turning the sunroof. It's like sort of doing yoga very quickly.
Britain's best-selling car, the Cortina, from 1972 to 1981. So every year was the Cortina best-selling car. It was the most common sight on British roads.
The Ford Cortina Mark III. Hips and lips styling. Like Diana Dawes on 4 wheels. Woof.
Literally can't remember the last time I saw a Mark II, 3 or 4 Cortina. I can't remember. They are so rare.
Another lovely thing about driving one of these is that people are very polite to you in one of these. They show a reverence to an old Cortina like this. What I've done was took it down to bare metal. You know, I put a primer on it and yeah, it's come up nice. It's come up nice. Evergreen, yeah. Don't change the colour. That's lovely. Evergreen, yeah.
You know, I'm not surprised it was so successful. It was brilliant. Shame they stopped making it.
As we pass onto England's Lane. That's how they used to speak in those voiceovers advertising the Ford Cortina. The Cortina from Ford.
There you have it, folks. Good night. Next time on the cars that made Britain great, for car and country.
I sat in it and thought, this is Jaguar, this is me.
Just what is the ultimate car for life in the Shires?
I've seen Land Rovers being repaired with a piece of tree.